Welcome to the Cognitive Science Digital Humanities podcast, where Dr. West considers the humanity of AI and what the success of AI might tell us about the human mind. So I thought this episode on phantasms was a special Halloween episode, but it turns out that phantasms are a philosophical idea created by Judith Butler. Oh well, let's give it a chance anyway and see if it's scary.
Okay, so now I want to lay down a few ideas about another Judith Butler concept called the phantasm. Now, the phantasm has a history going way back in philosophy, and it's been slowly developed into different idea, I think, now than it was before. So, specifically, Butler's idea is that the phantasm is kind of like, it's a let's come back to this idea of performativity. Okay, so I've argued that we perform words into existence, and we perform the sort of entire lexicon of words and the semantic meaning of words into existence. So we perform other things into existence, but we're going to talk about words. But then what do we do with these things? Well, we were talking about performativity. Okay, well, we perform with them. We perform narratives with them. Now, these narratives are not necessarily stories, right? They're the narrative of my life, the narrative of my work, and so on. And that's a good way to think about it because, well, in the case of large language models, they're actually trained on stories. And they don't know the difference between a true story and a not true story, except in that they're labeled as true or not true, by people writing about stories and writing about real things. So they do know the difference between real and not real, but not in the sense that we know it. But still. Okay, so we've got this performativity, and we're performing things into existence. Now, so what is a phantasm? The notion of the phantasm, and this, I'm just going to put my own spin on it as I sort of take it, but I think it's a really important idea. The notion is that within the high dimensional space of all of our, I'm also going to put my AI spin on it too. So within the high dimensional space of all of our ideas and relationships between words and so on, that there are something like a cluster, but much more than a cluster. There are relationships in there that get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we use these relationships to do our performances, right? So if we think about the high dimensional space, the thing is to say what word comes next in a large language model. But then they seem to do more than that. They go further. They're kind of like, putting together sentences, stories, and so on. Okay, and I've argued that that's actually in the high dimensional space. We can think of them as valleys or gullies or creeks or things, and you get in one and you start flowing. There's different ways to flow, but you're not going to flow way uphill on these things. So, okay. So people are doing that, and then we can talk about the relationship. So essentially, this is a way of building up ideas, but then building relationships between ideas. Okay, so a phantasm is something like that. It's like sort of almost, we could say, an attractor space in the high dimensional space where ideas tend to go together and flow together and produce certain narratives. Okay, so now we can look at this and we can say, okay, well, now Butler has an interesting take on this too, which is that the phantasm is, so I'm going to again warp it to my own thinking, but that the phantasm is kind of its own reward being in it. So this is an interesting point. We haven't talked about motivation yet. Okay, so in the large language models, when they're trained, they're rewarded. Okay, so when they're performing, they're essentially basing that performance on having been rewarded in the past for related performances. Okay, so this is motivation. Now, of course, the weights are frozen and it's not getting any dopamine hit when it, completes something really cool or anything like that. But you need motivation in order to do something, right? That's why in AI, they talk about the goal a lot and programming in the goal. Because without the goal, the AI will just sit there and do nothing, right? You have to motivate it. Okay, sorry, I was walking outside and suddenly it just started to pour rain on me, so I ran back inside. Um, and you probably can't hear the rain or notice the difference because I use an artificial intelligence to clean the sound, so it disappears, all the background stuff. Um, although, mm, I guess that's the professional thing to do. The background stuff is kind of interesting though, because it adds color to the story, to the narrative that I'm putting out. Anyway, so where were we? We were talking about the phantasm and motivation. So this is a very interesting point because it's sort of like the phantasm, these systems are not about creating truth. They're about creating coherent narratives. And so that's their motivation. And if you look at the way it was trained, that's the motivation. Um, but the point I'm making is that humans also do this. And, oh, excuse me. This is Butler's point in a way too, that when human beings, so she sees phantasms and she's trying to explain political things. So why would somebody, act really intelligently and pursue in a certain direction lots of things, but then willfully, almost seemingly willfully, believe in things that are not true or ignore things that are true in order to, I don't know, sort of further push their phantasm or to further immerse themselves in the phantasm. That's what she argues is going on. And yeah, I mean, this is a very important point, is that we humans do not use information processing necessarily to get at the truth. We do sometimes, but I think at the university we overestimate how much we do this. Mostly we use it to get along, to create a coherent society, and to promote ourselves within it, and to seek rewards that are, biological rewards are easier to understand. So we want food, we want sex, we want sleep, and so on. So we've got this notion of the phantasm, sort of an attractor space, a space of related ideas. We can think of it as ideas that feed into each other and keep you in there. Round and round you go, constantly generating more and more narratives based on the phantasm, right? So, and in this sense, we could see it as being very political. But other things too. Perhaps the most fundamental phantasm is the notion of yourself or myself, right? So I am a person, I'm here, I'm me, but I represent myself to me in a set of interrelated ideas. And there's a fair bit of work showing that one thing that humans really focus on in their memory and their thinking and their processing is themselves. So I know a lot about me, but there's a lot about me that causes me to perform that I don't know. I don't have access to the high dimensional space in which my representation of me exists. I can only flow through it. Okay. So, in a way, and there are experiments going on with this as we speak, I'm constantly prompt engineering myself in the background when I'm thinking about myself. I'm saying, I'm in this situation, and remember, I'm me. And so I think this is somewhere where we're going to go. I think we've already gone there. I think this is how Strawberry, the new version of ChatGPT, it's not really a new version, it kind of is, but it does this sort of more complicated self-prompting and reflecting where it includes more things in the prompt than just what has just been set up to that point. Okay, and a lot of people have been suggesting this. And in particular, humans, like if I'm doing something and it's for me, I would prompt myself, well, this is me. Then I would prompt myself, well, I'm in this situation. But with the situation, I would just name it. I'm at work. Okay. And I'm me. That's now, that's very easy to say, but those two things, we can think of them as phantasm, the phantasm of me or the space of me, and its interrelation with the space of work and what I know about work, work culture, and so on. If you're in a relationship, if you're falling in love, if you have a family, these are all things that you're going to perform, right? And you can also go offline and think about other people. You don't have to be performing. You can think about other people performing, and so on. So what is the motivation, though, here? It seems that we are not sort of neutral as to what space we're in. It seems that we've all had this experience. You're talking to somebody, maybe they have strong religious views or strong political views, and they're a smart person, and you point out some things and they're like, no, no, and they go elaborately around that. And yet they'll basically commit what is called the hypothesis confirmation bias. And what that is that if something comes up and it doesn't fit with your phantasm, I'll put it in phantasm language. If it just doesn't fit with where you're at, you question it and you question it and you question it. And if you're smart, you'll find reasons to doubt it. Or if you're not going to spend as much intellectual effort on it, you'll just throw it out. You'll just say, yeah. I know there's a reason. I don't have time to think of it. It just doesn't smell right. My gut tells me it's wrong. And that's all I need to know. But if something agrees with what you're thinking or what the sort of zeitgeist of the space is, then you're going to be like, oh yeah, that's it, without questioning it. You're not going to question it. So human beings are, in science, we're supposed to understand that we can only disprove things. We can't prove things. But human beings are very positivistically motivated, and we seek to prove that we're right. We seek to not question what's going on. Now, I think this can go pretty deep, but I think here we need to make a distinction too, that humans can get some handle on this. Like the scientific method is a way of forcing humans to think more carefully in this way. And in general, when people think carefully, they can get some handle on this. But what is the motivation here? So when you're trying to get a handle on it and think accurately, your motivation is like, I'm trying to get to the truth. I'm trying to figure this out. But that's not the only motivation, right? I mean, another motivation is just to get along, right? Is to get rewarded in the system where everybody else is obeying a certain phantasm. Remember, this is a shared experience in most cases. So people are say, at a rally for something, and you're not going to bring up, even if you have some thoughts, you're going to be like, if I bring that up, I'm going to be unpopular. I need to get along here, right? And then we can take this a step further where getting along can be very rewarding. When you're with a group of people and you're all on the same page and you're all striving towards something or believing intensely in something, it produces. And I mean, this is something we haven't studied a lot, but we have a lot of examples of. You can have ecstatic church services, or you can have charged political rallies, or you can go to a motivational speaker and the audience, and they're all getting riled up and roused up, getting lots of energy from it. So this is actually very interesting that there seems to be some sort of motivational system that is about the phantasm. It's about the space. It's not about truth or achieving anything particularly in the real world. It's about sort of creating a more and more intense or streamlined, or I'm going to say low entropy space. I like the entropy approach to this. And so I'm going to go with that. So entropy is a measure of disorder. Low entropy is low disorder. So that's all I'll say for now about entropy, because I think it's an important concept in thinking about this and in artificial intelligence. So I'm just going to use it to mean low disorder here. So I think what's going on is that this kind of makes sense that we have a limited amount of space as humans in our head. It's big, but it's limited. And the more we can bring order to it, the more we can kind of fit in there, and the more efficiently we can use it, and the more we can not feel strange feelings of that doesn't seem right, that makes me uncomfortable, what's going on. So that sort of feeling, I think we are motivated this way. I think we have a motivation, an actual real biological neural motivational system that rewards us for lowering entropy. And again, I can say a lot more about that later. In terms of reasons for why we might think that's true, there's actually a lot of reasons. But for now, applying it to the large language space, to the phantasms, right? So phantasms are a way of organizing all your thoughts in a big way. That's kind of what Butler's getting at. And this way of organizing them seems to be intrinsically rewarding. I think you're talking about a state of low ambiguity, a state of clarity, a state of no confusion. So these are all things that are rewarding. And also, when you get into the social sphere, it's a state of getting along, or maybe even thriving within a group. So your tribe, you are doing well in your tribe, you are doing great. But you need to, and for some people, that is a huge motivator. It's called being popular, it's called being an influencer, all these things. So this is an interesting idea. So the phantasm is, in this sense, also, it's performed into existence as well too, right? So these phantasms are shared, and we have labels for them, right? So I could say I'm a capitalist, or I'm a communist, or I'm a feminist, or I'm a this or that. And these, as soon as you say them, you see that they evoke more than just the basic idea. And in fact, we all know that a lot of people use these labels and don't know what they mean. They just say the label because they know it refers to the phantasm, right? It's a collection of things. It's a way of dressing. It's a way of speaking. It's a way of, what coffee place you hang out at, or what you do for entertainment and so on and so on. It's a fashion. It's all of these things rolled up into one thing. And it isn't a logical thing. It isn't a clearly laid out set of ideas. It's a bunch of stuff that belongs together. And think about it, for no reason in most cases. So like say you belong to a certain tribe, say back in the 80s you were a punk rocker. You dressed a certain way and you listened to a certain type of music. And why did you dress that way and listen to that music? Um, hmm. Well, there's no necessary logical connection, right? I mean, the music, you got spiky hair, the music has sort of a spiky quality. So, I'm not saying there's no deep entanglements there, but I'm saying there's no logical reason for it. It's a fashion or a style. And like when you go to work, you dress up in work clothes, you behave a certain way. It's so these are all phantasms from this way of thinking about it that we perform into existence and that we can think about, but mostly we don't. Mostly we are just flow in them. And I don't know, it's an interesting question. Again, I think at the university we think about things, paid to think about things. But I think for a lot of people, the motivation of a phantasm is just to be in it. And I've actually talked to people who I've, asked them. So this happened during COVID, actually, and they're sort of, um, at with a group of people getting mad about vaccines and vaccines are garbage and they're forcing this on us. And then, but I know they have a vaccine and I know they believe in vaccines. And I'm like, why are you doing that? And they're like, well, I gotta get along with my tribe. Like, there's no contradiction there, right? It's you perform for your tribe. Now, this is an extreme case. So this is, in this case, this is a person who is like, well, I'm just going to separate these things in my mind. Like, of course, there's the truth of what's going on, but then there's the truth of getting along in your day-to-day life, fitting in, being with people, and that these are just simply separate, right? And then there's people who just don't even know. I think they just live in a world of getting along or influencing or popularity, or this uses up huge amounts of time in our life and is well, I guess it's very important too, right? Because do you want to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend? Do you want to be lonely? Do you want to make money? So these things um, get out of control or can get out of control. They are the things that organize society, but they are also the things that they drift in the wrong direction that can cause the downfall of a society. So anyway, so this is the notion of the phantasm. And I think uh, we can understand it very well. I mean, there would have to be a lot of work on this, but I think we have the potential to understand these things in a high dimensional space, uh, built on words and, um, using the words to organize concepts and so on. Now, does it have to be built on words? No. But that seems like a very clear way to build it, and probably the dominant way that these things are built in people's minds. Um, so, yeah, I think words are essential or an essential and major component of this. Um, and I think lowering entropy in our system it is what keeps us alive. But I think once it gets into the space of words and concepts, I mean, it performs a function there too, right? Because it streamlines things and makes things more clear, finds good places to be from a coherence point of view. Anyway, that's the idea of the phantasm.
Oh, wow. So that actually was scary. It's like humans and AIs are locked in the same haunted mansion, full of phantasms. I hope I can get to sleep tonight. Anyway, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in the next episode.